大家好，欢迎收看三分天下事，天下事说三分，我是 Andrew 安德鲁。在咱们这一期的三分天下事呢，那么首先呢，今天也非常高兴呢，能够邀请到行动党的正副党魁来到咱们的节目。坐在我右手边呢，可能咱们华社呢也非常熟悉的，就是行动党的党魁 David Seymour。
你好，大家好，我的名是 David Seymour。我是行动党党魁。
那么另外呢，我们有行动党的新任副党魁 Bev Holbrook 来到咱们的节目里面。Welcome to the program, Bev.
Thank you, Andrew, and hi, everybody.
在我左手边呢，咱们的这个中文先驱报的主编叶涛，那么大家也非常熟悉了啊，都是老朋友了哈。
大家好。
那么在咱们的这一期的节目里面呢，就是最主要就是探讨一下行动党的前世今生以及来世，谈谈这大选呢是越来越近了啊。当选民们最终要面临一些抉择的时候呢，你该怎么去选一个政党？所以说呢，我们尽量呢能够抓紧机会把。所有的政党吧，尽量吧啊，就是在通过这个三分天下事的节目里面呢，带给大家，让大家来做出一个最明智的选择。Welcome to the programs, Bev and David. Now, shall we? Ladies first, all right. Bev, I think David, the Chinese community, he is pretty well known. Put it this way, it's been years, and he's been working very hard, especially with the absent electorate. However, you, as a new elected deputy leader of the Air Party, would you like to take this opportunity to briefly introduce yourself to our viewers?
Sure. Well, as you know, my name's Beth Holbrook. I'm a 53-year-old mother of two adult sons. I've spent most of my life in self-employment, either in small business and also some time in farming. And currently I'm in local government. I'm an elected representative. I'm the chair of the Rodney Local Board of Auckland Council. And I live about an hour north of Auckland in a lovely little place called Warkworth.
Oh, yes.
Very famous place.
Where you get a lot of traffic, especially during holiday seasons.
You know it.
Yes.
Beautiful view over there.
Yes. So how do you feel being the new elected deputy leader of the party?
Well, after the initial excitement and celebration wore off, I realised, it's a huge responsibility going forward, taking the party through the campaign and assisting David to gain more party votes for ACT. But also beyond that, of course, hoping to be in Parliament. I know it's going to be a lot of hard work, but I'm up for it.
Why do you choose our ACT party?
There's really no other party that fits me. And
it means no choice.
There's plenty of choices of parties, but the one that suits me the best is ACT, and always has been ACT, because it's that mix of being sort of socially tolerant, but also supportive of free markets. And so it occupies, I think, a unique space in the political spectrum, and there's no other home for me but ACT.
Now, David, as I said earlier, you've been very well known to the Chinese community, so I want to ask you to introduce yourself. But yesterday, when I got onto the App Party's website and I tried to understand a little bit more about you, just one sentence really caught my eyes. It was, you say that, your mom actually influenced you a lot. Can you just tell us a little bit about you and your mother?
Everybody thinks their mother was an amazing person.
Yes.
And I'm no exception. My mum overcame a disability. She had polio. She was one of the last people in the Western world to have that virus, and she managed to overcome it. She managed to learn to walk with the help of many physiotherapists. She went to Otago and got a master's degree in pharmacy. She became the chief pharmacist at the Northland Health Board. Sadly, she passed away or died 10 years ago. And that separation's made me think about a lot of things. One of them is the parental reunification visa. And that's one of the reasons why ACT says that you should be able to get a 10-year multi-entry visitor visa so that people will not be separated from their families. Now, you'll still have to pay for health insurance and you have to have enough money to survive. The taxpayer in New Zealand's not going to pay for you, but you should be able to bring your parents here and be reunited with your own mother or father if you live here, so long as it doesn't cost the taxpayer.
Okay. So now, when we talk about the ACT Party, I believe naturally the Chinese community will think about this person, Kenneth Wang.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That hasn't been that long ago, since he left the party. But what actually fascinates me is your party, your board has selected Bev. All right. There must be something, or more than something, that Bev is better than Kenneth Wang. What are they?
Well, there's many things. One is that Beth is much harder working.
Harder working?
Much harder working
So
for the
what,
ACT
Kenneth
Party.
Wang was lazy?
Well, I didn't say he was lazy. I said Beth was harder working.
Okay, all right.
So Beth has been with us. She's been a vice president of the party. She's organised our conferences. She's stood as a candidate for several elections. What we got from Kenneth was kind of a view that if we didn't give him everything, he would not help us. And our view is that if you want to be part of the ACT Party, you're a team player. You get stronger together. You don't give people ultimatums, and so what you'll see from ACT is a strong team and people who are kind of in it for selfish reasons. They're not part of our future.
But actually, before ACT Party has been quite popular in Chinese community, partially because of Kenneth Wang.
Yeah.
Do we worry about by losing him?
Well, before the party decided to select Beth instead of Kenneth, I asked many people in the Chinese community what they thought.
So you have got some feedback?
Absolutely. I speak to people in the Chinese community all the time, and they said to me a couple of things. One is, we don't see Kenneth doing any work. And two is, and some people in the Chinese community were actually a bit offended that we thought they would vote for us if we had a Chinese face. And so people said to me, I may look Chinese, but I don't vote for someone else just because they look like me. I vote for people that have the right values. And I vote for people that want to make us safe and be tough on criminals, people that want lower taxes and a better environment for business and family. And we think that education's important. Those are the things we vote for. And obviously it's nice to have someone who's got a Chinese face, and Miss Ng, our candidate, is a very capable candidate. But ultimately Chinese people say, well, we're going to vote for the best policies for us, not for people who may look like us.
I can see that you have a very nice smile on your face now. Has it made your day?
Yes, that was very flattering.
Yeah.
Now, questions. There are speculations, or people talk about all sort of possibilities. One of the main reasons why, Bev, you were elected as the deputy leader, and you also stand for ACT in the Rodney electorate, was because you have the ability, all right, to gain support from those people who previously supported the Conservative Party. They got about what, 4.5?
About nearly 4 point last election.
In the last elections, and I don't see there's any good chances for the Conservative parties to come back, not come back. It never happened in the Parliament, but having a good chance in the Parliaments for this coming election. So there are talks that it is part of the strategy that Bev, one of your main role is try to gain as much support from the supporters previously supporting Conservative parties, and hopefully you can win the electorate. Is that true? I mean, is that real?
Well, that's the first time I've heard that spoken, actually. So that's an interesting strategy. And
Or has David never told you about it?
no, David hasn't discussed that particular strategy with me.
It's a surprise to me too, but I think we welcome people, regardless of who you voted for last time. You can vote for ACT this time.
Now, talking about that, that's one thing, interestingly, very recently, Bev, you were on the headline because of Labour parties, their policy of was supporting families with young babies, $60 a week or something like that. And you did cite, and for those people who can afford a baby should actually wait until they have the ability, or maybe in their 30s or late 40s or whatever. Now, I agreed 100% myself, all right? Can you just go into a slightly, explain exactly what you mean to our viewers?
Well, I think anyone that's contemplating having a family needs to think very carefully about the commitment that they're getting themselves into. I mean, it's an 18-year commitment. I know that. I've had 2 sons, and children don't get any cheaper as they get older. So a throwaway election bribe of $60 a week to support a baby is not a long-term strategy, and surely we can be more ambitious for families than giving them a handout. So that thing about being able to afford children doesn't mean that you're necessarily poor. You can be in any situation. You may have other commitments. You may not have finished your education or training. You may have family commitments. You may feel that you don't have a permanent home to live in, or perhaps not a stable relationship. Those are all considerations that people need to make before they have children. And I think if there's any barrier to that, if there's any issue with that, what is it? Is it access to contraception, perhaps? Is it lack of education? Those are things that we can look at.
I mean, when I think about the Labour's this social policy, you know, sometimes it does make me to recall the Opportunities Party's $200 a week or something like that for the age between 18 to 23 or something like that. What I'm trying to point out here is this country in the past, maybe it's still happening up to today. We see there is a high rate of teenager pregnancy. I mean, my understanding is this country, you know, like there's a law that's, you know, if you ever have a sexual relationship with a underage teenager, you're breaking the law. But so far we have never heard of any man or the father of the child been accountable or been charged.
Be charged by that.
Because of having sexual relationship with teenagers. Why is that so? To have, and make sure that our enforcement units is actually doing some job to stop that.
Well, there are a lot of convictions for statutory rape, but what you've got to remember is that the age of consent is 16.
Yes.
And there are not that many teenage girls having children who are under 16. The ones that are, remember the law says that it's legal if the father is within 2 years age range. So it's very possible that a large number of people, women as young as 14 and 15,
yes,
can get pregnant without breaking the law. I think the real issue is this. We need to stop the welfare system paying people to have children. And ACT's policy is that if you have extra children while you're on a benefit, that's okay. We'll keep giving you the resources you need, but we will give them to you as income management, meaning we will pay your rent, we will pay your electricity and your water.
But not money.
And yeah, we'll give you a card to buy groceries and nappies, but we're not going to just give you cash for having more children. That's the real answer. But I don't think the statutory rape issue is the main problem here. Police do pursue that very vigorously, and so they should.
Okay. Let's take a break, and then when we come back, we'll touch more about ACT's policies or the differences between the ACT Party and the National Party. We'll come back. 欢迎再度回来，三分天下事，天下事谈三分。那么咱们这一集呢是访问行动党的正副党魁 David Seymour 以及呢 Bev Holbrook. The first part we talk very briefly about the ACT Party. Bev, introduce you to our viewers, and of course with the mention about the relationships between the ACT Party and the ex-deputy leader Kenneth Kwong. So the following, we'd like to focus a little bit more about the present and perhaps a little bit about the future. Dave, I'd really like you to tell us a little bit more thoroughly what are the differences between the ACT Party and the National.
They've just adopted whatever policies they thought would make them popular. If you look at ACT, 3 strikes. We said we'd be tough on crime. We're actually locking people up. Partnership schools. We said that we needed new schools to engage children who are dropping out. So
Is it working?
It's absolutely working.
The charter schools?
Yep. I mean, Vanguard Military School, they reckon about a quarter of the kids there weren't even going to school before. Now they're engaged, they feel good about themselves. Vanguard Military School is one of the top 10 schools in Auckland. That's amazing. So, you know, we've delivered that, we've taken action. Whereas the National Party, on the other hand, you know, they promised to reform the RMA, they promised to fix the housing market, they promised to reduce tax and regulation. And once they get into power, they don't really do anything. With just one MP, you know, we're opening up schools that are changing kids' lives for the better. Imagine what we could do with 5 MPs. The other thing I'd say is with respect to the Chinese community. The National Party is very, very happy to use the Chinese community as a sort of political ATM. Very happy to raise money out of the Chinese community. But what happens when it comes to actually taking action? Well, you know, Dr. Zhang Yang is not respected in Parliament, is not respected in the National Party caucus. He hardly ever gives a speech. They say, go away, talk to the Chinese people, raise lots of money, and then, you know, that's it. The ACT Party has been strongly beside the Chinese community at every opportunity. I'll just give you one example. About a year ago, Ron Marks said in his speech in Parliament that Kanwal Bakshi and Melissa Lee should go back to India, go back to Korea. Nobody in the National Party stood up for them. I stood up and said, actually, that's wrong and he should apologise. So, you know, we'd like to get more money from all donors, but the ACT Party doesn't just use the Chinese community as a political ATM and then do nothing. We actually take action and make New Zealand a better place. And, you know, I show up. There's only one of me, but I'm at practically every Chinese New Year event that you'll see. And I do the rounds and I appear in the Chinese media. So we've shown real commitment to the Chinese community, not just a sort of part-time commitment.
Now, you do mention a number of times about one, you know, you are the only ones, you know, representing the ACT Party in the parliaments. Now, my next question is, why just you?
So first of all, you know, every single MMP election, ACT has strategically stayed in Parliament. Now, the next question is, how do we grow? Okay, so when we've done well in 2002, 2008, or 1999 or 1996, we've had a number of things. We've had continuity of leadership and stability. We've had confidence of being re-elected to Parliament. And we've had positive news and no mistakes. Now, in 2011 and 2014, we had a poor result. Why? Because those years we changed the leader right before the election. It wasn't obvious that we would win Epsom or be back in power, and we'd had some bad publicity leading up to the election. This time, well, same leader, 3 years. Nobody questions that I'll win in Epsom. Our polling has me 16% ahead, and that was before the National Party endorsed me. And we've had positive publicity for 3 years. So
David, you know, like 2 months ago, nobody ever thought of the Green Party, their support would drop below 5%.
So there's nothing.
Nothing is guaranteed.
And also Peter Dame, remember?
That's right.
And it shows you how much things can change. So you'd have to be, in this environment, you'd have to be pretty brave to bet that ACT's not going to see 2%, 3%, 4% and bring Beth in and Brooke Van Velden and Bhupinder Singh and Stephen Berry. So this is an environment where lots of change is possible. And I think it's likely that the ACT Party will end up electing several more MPs, just as we did in 2008, because all of the groundwork is there. And over the coming 5 weeks, you're going to see a huge amount of direct communication. Our volunteers will be out delivering letters tailored and targeted to specific voters. Our online advertising effort will be very large, and our effort in the Chinese media will be very large. So I think actually, you know, ACT Party is the party to watch this election, particularly because National are running out of steam and out of ideas, and it's time for the rise of ACT again.
Oh, can I put it this way? You know, like for all these years, perhaps the ACT Party has not found enough ground supporters, because this actually has some link to my previous questions. The Chinese community can't tell the difference between the national and the ethnic. All right, you have not differentiate yourself enough. What we have seen in the past is like before the Matilitole saga, you know, like the Green Party tried to move away from Labour, you know, try to make themselves different from Labour, all right, rather than, you know, the centre or left-wing voters simply just give the votes to but because, you know, if I vote for Labour, it's almost equivalent to voting for the Greens because you both are the same group, okay? So the same thing maybe is happening between the Ed Party and the National. So my question is, what would you do to tell everybody that we are different from National? Come on, all right? We're not brothers. We're just maybe in some case we're partners, but we're not brothers. We're not married together, all right?
Well,
What
we're allies, aren't we?
yeah,
but you know,
but you're different.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, you can't say, well, you haven't differentiated yourself. Then I tell you how we have, and then you say you haven't. Well, what I'm telling you is that our tax policy, totally different. The Act says no one should pay more than 25% of their income on income tax. The National Party are happy to tax you 33%. Our welfare policy, the ACT Party says 5 years on welfare and you go on income management. Have an extra baby on welfare, you go on income management. The ACT Party says the RMA is red tape and regulation holding back our economy. It's not enough just to tinker with it. We've got to replace it. The ACT Party says that we've got to actually introduce totally new schools to engage kids who are disengaged. The National Party says, well, we'll just mess around with the schools that are already there. The National Party says we're doing everything we can on crime, and if people break into your shops and dairies, we'll give you $1.8 million. It's pathetic. The ACT Party says we've introduced 3 strikes. We want to increase it by adding it to burglary, and we want to have special incentives for prisoners to learn to read, and we're going to have policies on youth crime coming out before the end of this election. So, you know, the National Party, half the time they look like Labour, half the time they try not to be Labour. The real problem is the National Party can't differentiate itself from Labour. People who believe in personal responsibility, low taxes, pro-immigration, you know, that's the ACT Party. And I think we're vastly different from them.
Do you really feel that's maybe part of the reason why people can't differentiate between the Ed Party and the National, because they're the only ones in the parliaments, and of course, you know, with more members be able to get into the parliament, you know, you can share the job, you can promote your policy much better.
Yes, that's possible. But I think another reason is that actually I can see a lot of policies are different between, you know, ACT Party and National Party.
Because you're the chief editor of
but
the Chinese
why the other people can't? I think maybe the reason is that you are too close to National. People always think that, okay, they just together.
So their eyes are covered.
Yeah, that's our cover.
Some people think that, but it's not true. We're actually quite different, and our policies are much stronger than theirs. They're just sort of, you know, whatever. So, you know, it's just a matter of time, but you're absolutely right. And that's why, you know, we get to 1.2%, then Beth becomes an MP, then there's 2 of us. We get to 2% and Brooke Van Velden becomes an MP. There's 3 of us. 2.8%, we get 4 MPs. All of that's very, very possible in the current climate. And then we will differentiate more, and you know, sort of growth comes growth on top of growth. But I think if you look at where I started 3 years ago, as the only member of the party, no one's ever done that before, going in all by themselves, going straight into government, leading a party. I've been awarded 2015 Trans-Tasman MP of the Year. I've put the assisted dying bill on the table. I've rebuilt ACT. I've stayed close to my electorate. I've opened up partnership schools that are changing children's lives for the better. I actually think if I have a successful result at this election, then I will have the most successful first term in Parliament of any member of Parliament since Parliament started sitting in 1850.
We have about 1 minute before we go to the next break. Now, one very simple question. The last 3 years, David, are you a happy man?
I'm very happy. I'm so lucky.
Working alone, you know, in the Parliament.
Yep.
No one to talk to.
Yep.
All right, are you a happy man?
Well, if you know what you believe in, you'll never be lonely. And I believe in personal responsibility, low tax, and the basic idea that so long as you're not hurting anyone else, you should be free to be whoever you want and do whatever you want. And as long as you've got strong principles, you'll never be lonely.
Okay, very well. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about the future of the Ed Party and possibly the center-right coalition. 三分天下事，天下事谈三分。咱们再度回来继续呢，就是行动党的访谈，政府党魁 David Seymour 以及 Beth Holbrook. David, just now we did mention about or focus a little bit more on the differences between the National Party and the Ed Party, and I believe by now, yes, we have a fairly good understanding. The Ed Party is yellow. The National is blue. Okay, but sometimes we also understand it takes time for people to understand more or deeper between the differences between parties. Okay, so that is not a real problem. But what actually alerts us is I so call the TVS, all right, technical voting system, all right, or strategic voting.
Yep.
I find it interesting. It's been going on for about 6 years. The last two elections.
Yes.
I remember the first one was John Baines, and then was the last one, 2014.
It was quite hot topic 6 years
Very
ago.
hot topic, and
now people just get used to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
At that time, I believe there are a lot of the Chinese voters. They don't understand. All right, they don't understand why do we have to do vote in that way in order to ensure that the Ed Party will still shown in the parliament. A lot of people, they don't understand. But I believe by now, when people talk about strategic, they understand what is going on, and whether it is, at the end of the day, it is their choice whether they want to listen to the party that they support or not. But my question one is, with regards to this strategic voting, do you or do you not believe it is it is something against the New Zealand democracy voting system? Do you actually see there's a problem? Or maybe there will be a problem if we do it more and more often in the future? What is your view about it?
No. First of all, strategic voting has occurred every single election since the beginning of MMP. Richard Prebble won the Wellington Central electorate in 1996. The National Party at that time really didn't try to compete because they knew that was best for them. In 1999, the Labour Party helped Jeanette Fitzsimmons win the seat of Coromandel.
Jeanette Fitzsimmons, that's Green Party.
The Green Party,
Yep.
yep.
Oh,
So
okay.
back then, this year, the Green Party are refusing to stand a candidate in Oharu to try and help Labour beat Peter Dunn. And of course, Epsom voters have worked out that it's smarter to vote for the ACT candidate than it is to vote for the National candidate because they get an extra party in. Now, the thing about this is that I think it's very disrespectful to the voters to say that they don't have a choice or they don't know what they're doing. The voters are smart people. They go into the electorate and they have their big orange marker pen and they have 2 boxes to tick and they make the choice that is best for them. And Epsom voters have voted for ACT when the National Party supported them voting for ACT, and in 2005 when the National Party campaigned against Epsom voting for ACT. So Epsom voters, just like voters around the country, are pretty intelligent and they can actually work out what the best option is
When
for
you
them.
say about the best option, how do you actually define the best?
Well, that's up to the voter to decide, but generally people in the Epsom electorate do not want higher taxes or new taxes. They want personal responsibility. They want to be able to access good schools. And those are all things that the ACT Party delivers. So, they give their vote to ACT.
Still back to the strategic voting. You just mentioned that it's not absence is not only electorate to do that, but John Key and Bill English, they publicly call their voters to vote for you in absent, which is quite unique. And the other party maybe have a different strategy in different electorate. Maybe they put different,
Well, the Green Party are not even running a candidate in a hurry.
Yeah, but they can choose to give up that electorate, but
well,
they didn't call for the vote to vote for the other party.
I don't see how you think.
Do you like that, David? Do
I
you
don't-
like
I
other
don't.
party leaders to tell their supporters
To vote for you.
vote for you
Even
rather than
then-
me
yeah.
try to win their support?
But see, you don't get it, and you're being disrespectful of the voter. The voter can work it out, and the voters have worked it out regardless of what the leader of the National Party says. They've worked out that, if you want to be smart and you want to get a centre-right government, if you want stability, if you want low flat taxes and no new taxes, then, the smart vote is for ACT. So, I think you have to put yourself back in the mindset of an Epsom voter like me who's sitting there saying, well, I've got these 2 votes, how do I use them to get what I want for the next 3 years?
But
That's what they're doing.
Don't you think that if this is going to carry on for the next few elections, that it is unavoidably the constituents in the absent electorate will look at the ACT party becomes a sub-party
To national.
to national?
Well, I don't see why that is. If you think about it, the National Party needs ACT desperately. Because if you're from the National Party, you're sitting there thinking, no one can govern alone under MMP. So who are we going to govern with? We can't govern with New Zealand First because they're racist and they're untrustworthy. The Maori Party, half the time, vote with the Labour Party. They don't really agree with us on much. So who does that leave? ACT. So ACT has actually become absolutely critical. The future of ACT is the
And you need
future of
more than
centre-right
just one
government.
MP.
Absolutely, and that's why you've got to give
Or
your
maybe more than 2 MPs.
Well, give us 10. But that's why you've got to give your party vote to ACT. And just think about it this way. There's about 175,000 ethnic Chinese in New Zealand. We think about 125,000 of those are over 18. If they all voted,
that is
they
not
would,
gonna
they would,
happen.
they would, no. If they all voted, they could elect 6 members of parliament. Now, wouldn't it be nice if maybe a third of the Chinese voters voted for ACT and we could elect 2 more MPs that share the values of the Chinese community, who have been loyal to the Chinese community and stuck up for the Chinese community when necessary.
The Chinese community is quite diverse.
Yes, very diverse.
Very
actually.
diverse.
Well, I agree. Well, I agree that's true. But by and large, we've stuck to the values that we're consistently told the number 1 issue is public safety, and I think the Chinese community have something in common, that they tend to be victimised by that. Just like we've had in Green Lane with the window washers, it's not big white men getting attacked. It's usually smaller Chinese women. We've stuck up for that consistently. So I respect that they're diverse, but I think 1 in 3 Chinese voters voting for New Zealand for ACT, electing 2 more ACT MPs that share core values would be a good outcome.
Very interesting. Just now you did mention about New Zealand First. The following few questions are related to New Zealand First, and perhaps when we talk about New Zealand First, we talk about Winston Peters. All right. You just said.
Can you name another New Zealand First MP?
Oh, Ron Mark.
Yeah,
of course.
And one more?
Shane Jones.
St. John's.
No, he's
it's
not an MP.
MP.
See, there you
It's
go.
not MP. It's not like a
See, you can only name 2. I mean, that's the quality. That's the quality of New Zealand First
okay.
MPs, isn't it?
Well, before Bath, I couldn't name another ACT party's candidates apart from David Seymour.
There you go.
Is it
So
before Bath? Now I can name
we're
Bath.
growing
Okay.
on you.
All right. Okay. Now, you just mentioned that the ACT party won't be able to work with New Zealand First. Are you so sure about it? Because there's every chance. Well, it's not really up to you, but the National Party may form some sort of agreements with the New Zealand First and form a centre-right government. And what are you going to do?
That's what we've got to stop, though, isn't it? So, you know, you need national plus ACT to be able to get over halfway.
No, we know that it is, well, okay, according to the polls, let's say, of course, you know, like even Winston Peters say that's the most reliable poll is the election night. I understand that, but according to the polls that we know, it's not going to happen.
Okay,
it's not enough.
So let me ask you this. Why are you interviewing me if you already know the result?
I don't know the result,
but we
because
just
there's always a chance.
Okay, so you don't know. So if you don't know the result, then how can you say there won't be a national ACT government?
Well, we talk about. Well,
Okay, so you don't know. You don't know.
Are you including the Maori Party or not?
No, you don't know.
Yeah,
okay, so let's just accept.
Okay, that's the
let's just
possibility.
accept that you have no idea. In fact,
you have idea.
You yourself said a second ago.
Okay.
Look how much variability there's been in the last 2 weeks. So we need a national ACT government to keep Winston Peters out. And the strongest thing you can do is to vote for ACT. If you vote for national, I might go with New Zealand First. You vote for ACT, you're keeping New Zealand First out. And if you don't like the racism that Winston Peters has peddled, whether it's calling it the Asian invasion, saying two Wongs don't make a white, I mean, let's remember all this stuff, because he's come after the Chinese community time and again, and ACT stood up to him. Then you need an ACT national government.
What if the number is not enough? Are you going to, work together with New Zealand First?
Try not to divert my questions, David. No, my question is.
Well, no, I'm helping improve your questions.
What if? Okay, and I believe there is a good possibility that what if after the election night, okay, let's say the National plus the ACT Party plus the Maori Party, all right, and it's still
Not enough.
3 seats short, all right, to form a government. And at the end of the day, it is Winston Peters. If that is the case, what will the ACT Party stand?
Well, I think
you will say no.
I think it's incredibly unlikely to happen. There's National plus New Zealand First currently on current polling have about 57% together.
National
plus New Zealand
New Zealand
First.
First.
New Zealand
Yeah,
First.
actually,
yes,
last
okay.
night's poll they had 54%.
Yes.
Now you need about 47 to win. So they together would have to lose 7%. Now I think that they'll lose polling to each other, but I don't know if they'll lose 47% total. On the other hand, if ACT picks up another 1 or 2%, then ACT plus National will be able to govern without them. So it's going to be one of us or the other. It's a very unlikely scenario that National's vote and New Zealand First vote would collapse by a combined 10%, and that you'd need National, ACT and New Zealand First together to form a government. If we come to that situation, then we'll see where we get to. But it's probably the most unlikely scenario.
I'm so amazed by now you have not given any thought about that situation can occur.
But if,
So it's
if that
mathematically
happens,
possible. But
if that happens, are you going to work together?
then we have to work it out. I mean, I suspect in that scenario that New Zealand First would choose to go with Labour, because remember, if National plus ACT can't form a majority, then Labour plus New Zealand First, probably plus the Greens, would be able to form a majority. So the other reason it's highly unlikely is that I don't think that Winston Peters would come with National if it meant having ACT as part of the governing coalition.
Really?
No, so that's why it's just so unlikely. But look, we'll negotiate through if we have to.
But Winston Peters, he did mention before that he couldn't work with the Greens too.
Yeah, and so he's going to have to.
So
make,
what? So
he's going to have. He's going to have.
Opposite?
He's going to have hard choice. He's going to have a hard choice, isn't he?
Okay. Winston Peters trying, to propose, if he's managed to be part of the government, he will try to push this law-binding referendum with regards to cutting down the size of the parliament and also removed Maori seats. From your understanding, tell us about how you feel about it.
Well, first of all, in my current work in local government, I'm talking to highly politically engaged people day and night in Rodney, and they are all terrified that Winston Peters will be anywhere near the next government. They say that because they don't trust him. he has made so many promises, he's got so many bottom lines that they're starting to realise this is an impossible situation. How can he form a coalition and with National, or anyone else for that matter, and carry out some of these promises that he's making? Because in reality, and this is where ACT understands the reality of being in government and being a support partner, there's no way you're going to get all of those bottom lines across. So people are starting to realise it's disingenuous of him. He may say he's going to cut down the numbers of Parliament, but he also makes a lot of other claims as well. So anyone that's voting for Winston grasping at just one policy, do they really believe that all those other ones are going to go with it? I think there's going to be some very disappointed voters if Winston makes it to that place at the table to even be able to start any of those negotiations, because he's not going to be able to get them through. But in terms of a smaller parliament, it's not about the number of politicians, it's actually about the size of government. It's the reach that government has into our lives and into our businesses. That's what ACT would like to see pulled back on. We probably have a lot of fat in the system, a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of ministries that could be culled, and with David's role as Under-Secretary to Regulatory Reform, ACT's actually been making some progress in that area, but it's not sexy politics, you don't hear about it, and that's what we would do, is cut back on the reach that government has.
Talking about one of the achievement or core policies being promoted by the ACT Party in the past was the 3 strikes. You did mention just now. However, this country was still facing with a lot of problems with crimes. What will ACT do, the party, ACT Party do, to try to eliminate or reduce by large numbers of reoffenders in the future?
Well, first of all, 3 strikes is definitely working. Even the
Up to your
opponents,
expectation?
even the opponents accept that there's less reoffending after people get a strike warning. So that's number one. Number two, it's just starting to put people in jail. So there's been about 140 people who have had a second strike and they're getting sentenced without parole. So it's starting to keep violent people off the streets. But it actually takes, if you think about it, it sort of takes 10 years for it to work, because people have to commit a couple of crimes before the 3 strikes starts biting them. So it started to work, and it will make New Zealand safer. I think our other policy is that we have to be smart on crime, and our policy of encouraging prisoners to read in prison is absolutely critical, because at the moment 60% of prisoners can't read, and 70% of prisoners are back inside after 4 years. That's not a coincidence. If you can't read, then you live in the cash economy, and the cash economy is the criminal economy. We've got to give those prisoners a pathway back to law-abiding lifestyles, and that means we've got to make them read. So ACT's policy says if you learn to read in prison, we'll take 6 weeks a year off your sentence. That way the whole prison system gets redirected towards literacy, rather than just locking people up.
There's a very different approach between the ACT Party and the New Zealand First. Winston Peters just recently, one of his policy with regards to how we treat the inmates as hard labor. He believes that the jail facilities is too good. The inmates should actually dealing with tougher sentences, harder labor, And do you not agree with, because the reason why I'm telling you, if you have talked to the Chinese community, there quite a substantial number of the Chinese voters actually do support New Zealand First, despite about whether he's racist or whatever. People, quite a substantial number of us actually support his policy. So when it comes to the way how we treat our the inmates in the prisons, do you agree Winston Peters has a more direct and straightforward way?
Well, you know, he's promised a more successful way, but look, he's held the balance of power twice. I mean, he's been the Deputy Prime Minister. Did he do anything like that when he had the chance? So, you know, of course, he'll promise things. You know, I hear he even promised the pigs that they'll be able to fly if he gets elected. But you know, I don't think he'll deliver it. But the broader policy question. Okay, so you want to make prisoners do hard labour. You've got to be able to supervise that. You've got to enforce it. So look, I mean, you also got to think about practically how does that work. So you're going to have to spend more money, you know, supervising it, because where are they going to do this hard labour? You've got to transport them there, then you've got to supervise them, make sure they don't escape, and then at the end of the day, you've got to release them eventually, and they don't have any useful skills. They're just angry. You haven't taught them to read. They can't get a proper job, and so you're going to spend more money, probably making us less safe. And so it's the kind of thing Winston Peters does, you know, promise, 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 promise. But, you know, when does he actually make New Zealand a better place? And the answer is he never has.
Yeah, actually, during the last 3 years you are in the Parliament, one thing really amazed me is a very controversial bill, like euthanasia. Is that right? Is that in the name? Yes. Actually, yeah, I personally quite support that bill. But it's quite interesting that this comes from you. Actually, you know, we all know that ACT is kind of centre-right or right-winger. So why do you think that's so important to New Zealanders?
Well, 75% of New Zealanders and the overwhelming majority of ethnic Chinese, according to polls, support this bill. And I think the reason for that is that they've seen people die and they've seen people suffer, and they just want a choice. You know, they know that sometimes doctors give you a little bit too much morphine to finish you off, but if it's your life, why shouldn't you be able to choose how you go and when you go? And I looked around Parliament, and not a single other member of Parliament would put a bill in the ballot, and I decided that I get paid by the taxpayer to work hard for the people, and if no one else would do it, then I would. And it's totally consistent with ACT's values of freedom, choice, and personal responsibility. You should be free to do what you like so long as you're not harming someone else. And the Attorney General's report has just shown that my bill actually make it perfectly safe for people who want the choice to go on their timing and their terms surrounded by loved ones, and people who do not want the choice will never be affected.
Very well. I do thank both of you for coming to the program.
Thank you.
And I thank Tony. All right. 好，那么感谢大家收看这一期的三分天下事。那么同时也要感谢中文先驱报对这个节目的支持。咱们下周再见。
再见。
谢谢。
Bye for now.